So, President, Chair, fellow members, the kids these days effect. Recently, on a local social media platform that will remain nameless, I noticed a post from someone that featured a blurry photograph, supposedly of a young person stealing a Christmas tree bauble from a Christmas display at the outlet centre in Swindon. They posted the picture with a comment along the lines of, "Isn't this awful? I can't believe that somebody could do something like this so blatantly." The post was then followed by several more comments along the lines of, "Disgraceful. I blame the parents. It wouldn't have happened in my day. I can't believe somebody would do something like this. Kids of today have no respect for anything." One person seemed to advocate violence as a solution and wrote, "It's because the police can't give them a clip round the ear anymore. It sorted me out when I was a youngster." And a further comment that simply stated, in all uppercase, "scum," but negated to elaborate further. So I began thinking, not of the alleged crime of bauble burglary, but more of the extreme responses, the kids these days opinions, which were certainly shared by the majority of the people replying to the post. So I had a dig around on the internet and found a quote that I'm paraphrasing slightly here, but essentially went, "The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect to elders and prefer to chat instead of physical activity. Children are now tyrants. They no longer stand up when older people enter the room. They contradict their parents, talk when there's company, gobble up sweets at the table, slouch and tyrannise their teachers." Not a quote from the last 100 years, or even anywhere in the last millennia. It was actually attributed by Plato to Socrates around 400 years BC. So, if the greatest thinkers of their time were rolling their eyes at young people's behaviour well over 2,000 years ago, and people are still doing it today, could it really follow that Western civilization has been in decline for thousands of years? Well, two researchers from the University of California wondered the same thing. So asked a random sampling of adults to rate today's youth on different measures. Those measures being respect for their elders, intelligence and reading. Firstly, they assessed the participants' own views on the subject and then asked them to rate kids today. They found that the more a person identified with a particular attribute, the more likely they were to believe that the kids today were falling short. The more knowledgeable the readers, for example, were more likely to believe that kids today like to read less. The same trend held for respect and intelligence. Those who had a more authoritative outlook thought children were less respectful of their elders, and those adults more academically inclined did not think kids were as clever. So, what exactly is going on? How have adults' beliefs seemed not to have changed since Socrates' time? Well, it was concluded that their findings point to some possible explanations for why adults consistently think that the kids are deficient in different areas. Firstly, we tend to judge others more harshly in areas where we excel. An enthusiastic reader, for example, will be more likely to be critical of someone else's reading habits. Secondly, people's memories of what they were like as children can't always be trusted, so they're likely to assume that their childhood selves have the same abilities that they do today, though in reality they may have spent a lifetime honing those skills. Therefore, the kids of today, in comparison to adults' falsely optimistic memories of themselves, have a hard time measuring up. The result is a perceived decline in ability over time, even where none exists. It's assumed that children these days are not as accomplished as the adults were when they were younger. This bias against kids shows up even more among researchers who have spent their careers studying child psychology, would you believe it? A study a few years ago looked at the classic test of delayed gratification called the marshmallow test. It essentially tests whether kids can keep themselves from eating something tasty. won't go into it here, but you can look it up later if you're not familiar with it. He found that the study found that the kids have been performing steadily better on the test over the past 50 years. A survey of experts in child cognitive development was carried out to find out what they would predict the result would be. About 82% predicted that either children would be more impatient or they would be about the same. As the test showed that children have become more patient over the last 50 years, this was the first time that the kids these days effect had been shown in a group of experts who worked in this area and should have really known better. So, when we next see a teenager committing the heinous crime of bauble theft, which we all know is illegal, antisocial, and just plain wrong, and we lament the state of the youth today, we must also consider that we have a lifetime of experience with which to make that judgment. They do not. And also that perhaps we weren't quite as perfect as we'd like to think we were.